So what's new with the Camaro these days?
Haven't changed it much. Been racing it in on Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings.
Yeah.
We just wrapped up season 2 No Prep Kings.
Oh yeah? Okay, yeah, that's what Chuck was telling me. I didn't realize they were continued on the second one.
It's going
Okay.
to air sometime in January.
Yeah?
Is what I hear anyway.
1 minute ago, federal authorities pulled back the reinforced door of Ryan Martin's racing trailer, and what they discovered inside sent absolute shockwaves cascading through the entire Street Outlaws community. What they found wasn't just unexpected, it was absolutely terrifying. And before this video ends, you're going to understand why Ryan Martin's world, everything he built, everything he represented, came crashing down in a single, devastating moment.
I was going to say, I really enjoyed watching the mega race, watching the build up to that, watching you guys do all that test and tuning. You guys swap the trans out, you swap the tires out, you got the altitude right and everything like that. That was like watching a Rocky movie or an Olympian training. So that was really cool to see how that's done, that backstage stuff.
It was a long 2 or 3 weeks for us, definitely.
Yeah.
But here's what makes this even more chilling. The evidence suggests this wasn't a recent mistake. This was systematic, calculated, and it had been happening right under everyone's noses for years. If you're a Street Outlaws fan, you need to hear this. Make sure you hit that like button and smash subscribe right now, because what you're about to discover will fundamentally change everything you thought you knew about the King of No Prep Kings. This isn't rumor. This isn't speculation. This is the documented truth about what really happened when Ryan Martin's carefully constructed empire finally collapsed.
Yeah, last thing, I remember SEMA 2 years ago. I saw your car there, along with some other Fireball stuff there. Are you still modifying the LT engines and whatnot? You are, okay.
Yeah. We don't have a car in a booth this year just because we're running. We got 3 cars here, just none of those.
Right.
But we're still hot and heavy on all that stuff.
The empire at its peak. Let's rewind for just a moment, because to truly understand the magnitude of this fall, you need to understand just how high Ryan Martin had climbed. This is Ryan Martin, driver of the legendary Fireball Camaro, a 2010 Camaro SS that became more than just a race car. It became a symbol, a myth, the vehicle that carried Ryan Martin to heights that most racers only dream about. Ryan Martin didn't just participate in racing, he dominated it. His name became synonymous with victory in the No Prep King circuit. Championship after championship, win after win. While other drivers struggled with consistency, Ryan Martin seemed to have unlocked some secret formula. He was methodical, precise, scientific in his approach to speed. The Fireball Camaro wasn't just fast, it was devastatingly, consistently, impossibly fast. His empire expanded far beyond the track. BNR Performance, his Oklahoma City-based shop, became a destination for racing enthusiasts across the country. His net worth soared past $2 million. His Instagram following exploded to over 300,000 devoted fans who hung on his every post. He had achieved what every racer dreams of: fame, fortune, and a reputation that opened every door. Ryan Martin sat at the absolute peak. He was living proof that with enough skill, enough dedication, enough raw talent, you could build something extraordinary from nothing but speed and determination. But here's what nobody understood at the time. That peak was built on something far more dangerous than just racing prowess. People watched Ryan Martin and wondered what he knew that his competitors didn't. How did he maintain such a consistent edge? What was his secret? The discovery in Ryan Martin's trailer provides a very different explanation for that dominance, an explanation that has nothing to do with superior driving skills or better equipment. When authorities opened that trailer door, they weren't just uncovering evidence, they were unraveling a carefully constructed double life that Ryan Martin had maintained for years. And the systematic nature of what they found, the professional compartments, the organized records, the calculated approach, suggests something truly unsettling. Raping wasn't Ryan Martin's primary business, it was his cover. The investigation begins. The investigation that led to Ryan Martin's trailer didn't begin with a dramatic raid or a lucky break. It began quietly, carefully, with anonymous tips that started reaching law enforcement months before that fateful search. Someone new. Someone close enough to Ryan's operation to understand what was really happening. And that someone decided to talk. The first tips were vague, almost dismissible. They suggested that Ryan Martin's frequent travels to racing events across the country served purposes beyond competition. His trailer, which everyone assumed was simply hauling the Fireball Camaro to racetracks, allegedly carried cargo completely unrelated to automotive performance. At first, investigators were skeptical. Was this just a jealous competitor trying to take down a champion? Racing communities are notorious for rivalries and grudges. But the tips kept coming, and each new piece of information added crucial details to an increasingly disturbing picture. Law enforcement made a decision: surveillance. They watched from the shadows, tracking Ryan Martin's movements with meticulous attention. They followed his trailer to racing events and documented every stop along the way. They compared his physical locations with his social media posts. And here's where things started to fall apart for Ryan Martin. Nothing matched up. There were multiple instances where the trailer appeared hundreds of miles from where Ryan Martin claimed to be. The routes didn't make sense for someone traveling directly between racing events. The stops occurred in areas with no racing facilities, no performance shops, no legitimate reason for a professional racer to visit. These locations were known for entirely different types of activities, the kind that have nothing to do with legal automotive competition. The surveillance revealed patterns that couldn't be explained away. Ryan Martin's trailer made regular stops that followed a schedule, but it wasn't a racing schedule. It was something else entirely. Something that required frequent interstate travel and believable cover stories for moving large amounts of equipment in unmarked trailers. Investigators began to suspect that racing provided Ryan Martin with something far more valuable than prize money or sponsorships. It provided the perfect cover for an interstate operation that needed legitimate explanations for constant travel and equipment transport. For months, they built their case. They interviewed witnesses. They connected dots. They documented every suspicious stop, every unexplained detour, every inconsistency in Ryan Martin's story. They knew they would only get one chance at this. If they moved too early, without sufficient evidence, Ryan Martin's attorneys would tear their case apart. If they waited too long, evidence might disappear. They needed the perfect moment, a time when Ryan Martin's guard was down, when the trailer would be accessible, when there would be no warning. That moment came when the trailer was left overnight in a parking lot far enough from BNR Performance that the drama wouldn't immediately reach Ryan Martin's ears. No warning system, no time to clean, no opportunity to hide what was hidden inside those walls. The trap was set, and Ryan Martin walked straight into it. The search, the discovery. When investigators approached Ryan Martin about searching the trailer, he appeared confident, almost relaxed. "I have nothing to hide, RP Mard," he reportedly said, with a casual shrug, unlocking the door himself. That confidence would last approximately 15 minutes. At first, everything looked exactly as you'd expect from a professional racer's trailer. Toolboxes arranged with precision, spare parts labeled and stored in logical order. The Fireball. Camaro itself properly secured for transport. Everything appeared legitimate, professional, clean. But investigators had come prepared. They weren't looking at surface-level organization. They were looking for structural inconsistencies, and they found them. The first fake panel was discovered along the trailer's side wall. It had been professionally constructed by someone who understood trailer architecture, someone who knew exactly how to create hidden spaces that would pass casual inspection. The wall appeared solid, but tiny gaps revealed the truth. What looked like the actual trailer wall was just a facade. The investigators asked for specialized tools. They needed to remove the panel without damaging potential evidence. As they worked, Ryan Martin's confident demeanor began to crack. When the first panel came away, what lay behind it was shocking. Bands of cash, stacks upon stacks of currency, stored along the entire length of the hidden compartment. The bills were organized with the same precision that characterized Ryan Martin's racing equipment, sorted by denomination, wrapped in specific quantities, arranged for easy counting and transport. But the money was just the beginning. Behind the false wall, investigators found waterproof containers holding documents that detailed transactions spanning multiple states and several years. There were names, dates, amounts, a comprehensive record of activities that had nothing to do with racing. The level of documentation suggested not amateur criminal activity, but organized, systematic operations with clear accounting and established territories. Electronic devices came next: burner, phones, tablets, hard drives, all stored in protective cases designed to prevent damage or data corruption. The effort invested in keeping these devices safe and hidden revealed their importance. Whatever information they contained was valuable enough to warrant extreme protective measures. Then came the plastic bags, white, powdery substances, multiple bags, carefully sealed and stored. The officers examining these bags exchanged knowing glances. The color drained from Ryan Martin's face as he watched them document the discovery. He refused to speak, pacing the trailer as investigators continued their methodical search. The discovery of the first compartment triggered a complete teardown of the trailer's interior. If there was one hidden space, there could be more. They found 3 additional compartments. The second space contained illegal firearms, weapons that couldn't be legally transported across state lines without proper documentation, weapons that served no purpose in automotive racing. The third compartment held more cash. Investigators estimated the total currency recovered from all compartments exceeded $300,000. The bills were organized in a specific pattern, suggesting they were either waiting for distribution or had just been collected. Either way, this amount raised immediate questions about money laundering, tax evasion, and the true source of Ryan Martin's wealth. The fourth hidden space contained scales, not the kind used for weighing car parts, but precision instruments designed for measuring substances. There were also performance enhancers and racing fuel additives, but the way these materials were stored alongside the scales suggested they might serve dual purposes. The compartments also held notebooks filled with handwritten entries, names that meant nothing to investigators yet, numbers that would need to be decoded, dates that would need to be cross-referenced with racing events to determine when Ryan Martin was supposedly focused solely on competition. USB drives containing encrypted files would require forensic computer specialists to access. Whatever information they contained was protected with sophisticated security measures, the kind that suggested the contents were extremely incriminating. By the time investigators finished cataloging evidence, the trailer was swarming with federal officials, and Ryan Martin had disappeared. He'd slipped away to contact his attorneys. The confident racer, who'd unlocked the trailer himself, now faced a legal nightmare that would require an army of lawyers to navigate. The Vanishing Act. Ryan Martin went radio silent. This wasn't immediately obvious to Street Outlaws fans. Racing schedules can be unpredictable. Drivers sometimes take breaks to work on their cars or deal with personal matters. The first few episodes of the new season aired without Ryan Martin, but fans initially assumed he was preparing for a dramatic return. Then the episodes kept coming, and the Fireball Camaro remained absent. No announcements, no explanations, just silence. Social media, which Ryan Martin had used consistently to engage with fans and promote BNR performance, went dark. His Instagram account, which had been updated multiple times weekly with racing content, shop updates, and personal moments, suddenly stopped posting entirely. Cherish, known affectionately in the racing community as Mama Fireball, also withdrew from public view. This was a woman who had proudly attended every race, celebrated every victory, and shared the journey with hundreds of thousands of followers. Her sudden absence spoke volumes. The racing community began to notice other disturbing patterns. Employees from BNR Performance started disappearing from the shop without explanation. One mechanic who had worked alongside Ryan Martin for over 5 years simply vanished. No farewell post, no explanation, just gone. Another crew member who'd been a regular fixture at racing events systematically deleted every photo and post showing him with the Fireball Camaro or anything bearing the BNR Performance logo. The BNR Performance website underwent dramatic changes. The gallery section featuring customer testimonials disappeared entirely. The comprehensive list of services was pared down to basics. It felt like someone was deliberately erasing evidence, removing anything that might draw unwanted attention or provoke uncomfortable questions. Ryan Martin's closest associates followed suit. Javier Canales, his crew chief and the man instrumental in the Fireball Camaro's success, stopped posting anything related to Ryan or the car. Michael Bean, described as Ryan's best friend, went completely silent on social media. The network that had contributed to Ryan Martin's meteoric rise was dissolving in real time, and everyone watching from the outside began to understand something was terribly, terribly wrong. Fans created theories. Maybe Ryan was sick. Maybe he'd been in an accident. Maybe he was working on a revolutionary new car that would blow everyone away when he finally returned. Nobody suspected the truth would be far darker than any of their theories. Behind the scenes, federal investigators were building their case. They were interviewing witnesses, analyzing the evidence recovered from the trailer, tracing financial records, and slowly, methodically, they were constructing a picture of Ryan Martin's other life, the one that had nothing to do with racing. The network unravels. As investigators dug deeper, they began to realize the scope of what they'd uncovered. This wasn't a one-man operation. The evidence pointed to something organized, systematic, and involving multiple individuals across several states. The burner phones recovered from the trailer contained text messages between Ryan Martin and individuals identified only by nicknames or initials. The conversations discussed packages, deliveries, and pickup times in language that superficially resembled legitimate business communication, but clearly referenced something entirely different than racing parts or performance upgrades. Email accounts revealed correspondence about inventory and distribution territories, terms that made perfect sense for a performance shop owner, but took on sinister meaning when cross-referenced with the physical evidence found in the trailer. This was organized crime. There was structure, hierarchy, territories, systems for communication, distribution, and accounting. The income from these operations wouldn't appear on any legitimate business ledgers or tax returns. Forensic accountants began the painstaking work of tracing money flows, attempting to determine exactly how much had passed through Ryan Martin's hands. He was facing potential charges of tax evasion and money laundering in addition to whatever other crimes the evidence suggested. But perhaps most disturbing, Ryan Martin wasn't the only one at risk. Investigators realized that others must have been involved. People who had access to the trailer, who helped with logistics, who turned blind eyes, or asked no questions. They began systematically interviewing everyone connected to Ryan Martin's racing crew, especially those who had been inside the trailer multiple times. Some claimed complete ignorance. They insisted Ryan was obsessively focused on racing and legitimate business. They described him as particular about trailer access, noting that he personally handled loading and unloading the Camaro and organized equipment himself. They presented this as admirable professionalism rather than suspicious behavior. After all, professional racers are notoriously secretive about technical advantages. Others, sensing the investigators' desperation for solid evidence, began offering information in exchange for immunity or financial compensation. Their stories varied wildly. Some described seeing Ryan meet with unfamiliar individuals in parking lots far from racetracks, exchanging packages while nervously scanning for observers. Others recalled being asked to store boxes in their garages temporarily, boxes they never opened because they trusted Ryan. One particularly damaging interview came from an associate who'd watched patterns develop over months. He described how Ryan would sometimes arrive at racing events in his personal vehicle, while the trailer took a different route, appearing hours later. He'd noticed, but hadn't questioned it. Why would he? Ryan Martin was a champion, a professional, someone you trusted. The interviews revealed either careful compartmentalization on Ryan Martin's part or extraordinary loyalty from his associates. Either way, investigators were building a case that extended far beyond what was found in that trailer. They were mapping a network, and somewhere in that network was the person who'd started sending those anonymous tips, the insider who decided they could no longer keep Ryan Martin's secrets. That person's identity remained unknown, protected by law enforcement as a confidential informant. But one thing was clear. Someone close to Ryan Martin had betrayed him. Someone who knew enough details to guide investigators exactly where to look. Someone who understood the operation well enough to provide specific, actionable intelligence. Ryan Martin's empire wasn't just collapsing from external pressure. It was being dismantled from within. The ripple effect. The discovery in Ryan Martin's trailer didn't just affect him. It sent shockwaves through the entire Street Outlaws ecosystem. The Discovery Channel faced an unprecedented crisis. Street Outlaws had always been careful to emphasize that participants were professionals conducting races with proper safety precautions. The show presented these racers as passionate individuals pursuing their dreams legally, making honest livings doing what they loved. Ryan Martin had been the face of that message. He represented the pinnacle of what street outlaws could offer. A self-made success story, a champion who'd built an empire from the ground up through skill, dedication, and business acumen. Now that carefully crafted image was in ruins. Network executives faced impossible decisions. Viewership had actually increased during the scandal. People were tuning in specifically to see if Ryan Martin would appear, if anyone would address the situation, if there would be any acknowledgement of what was happening. But how long could they continue producing content that ignored the elephant in the room? Ryan Martin had been a fan favorite. His absence left a void that couldn't easily be filled. His racing style, his expertise, his connection with audiences, these weren't qualities you could simply replace by promoting another driver. When investigators contacted Discovery Channel producers requesting all unedited footage involving Ryan Martin, the network immediately complied. They wanted no association with whatever legal troubles Ryan faced. They handed over hours upon hours of raw footage, essentially throwing Ryan Martin under the bus to protect themselves from potential legal consequences. Other racers faced their own reckonings. Those who'd competed against Ryan Martin for years began questioning whether his success had been entirely legitimate. Had his financial resources, which everyone assumed came from BNR performance and racing winnings, actually come from illegal sources? Had he bought advantages that others couldn't afford? Social media exploded with speculation and conspiracy theories. Bloggers began analyzing Ryan Martin's championship wins, looking for patterns or irregularities. They pointed out that success in racing requires substantial financial resources before talent even enters the equation. They suggested that Ryan's mysterious funding had allowed him to build better equipment, hire better crew members, and test more extensively than competitors. Some racers publicly distanced themselves from Ryan Martin, deleting photos and making statements expressing shock and disappointment. They emphasized that their brands stood for honest competition and that anyone who betrayed the community's trust had no place in it. Others maintained strategic silence, which only made people wonder if they'd been involved in Ryan's activities or had simply chosen to ignore warning signs. The racing community, which had celebrated Ryan Martin as one of their greatest champions, now found itself questioning everything. If someone at his level could maintain such a massive deception, who else might be hiding secrets? What other seemingly legitimate operations might have darker purposes? Trust, once broken on this scale, doesn't rebuild quickly. Ryan Martin's fall had poisoned the well for everyone. The informant's revelation. Just when investigators thought their case might stall, when Ryan Martin remained impossible to locate and witnesses proved either ignorant or uncooperative, everything changed. Someone walked into a police station and confessed. This wasn't a member of the Street Outlaws franchise. He was just a regular person from Oklahoma, or so everyone who knew him believed. He arrived one morning unannounced and informed officers about his involvement in illegal activities he could no longer live with. But here's what made this confession extraordinary. He refused to name anyone else involved. Investigators offered him complete immunity. They promised protection. They tried every technique in their arsenal to get him to provide names, to identify co-conspirators, to explain the full scope of the operation. He wouldn't budge. He would only discuss his own actions. So, how did investigators connect this confession to Ryan Martin, the anonymous tips? The same confidential source who'd started the investigation sent another message the week before this man appeared at the station. The tip warned that a package was being arranged, something that would blow their minds. When the confessor appeared exactly as predicted, investigators understood. The anonymous informant had orchestrated this. They'd convinced or coerced this person to turn himself in as a way of providing investigators with leverage. Finally, when investigators asked directly if he knew anything about the anonymous tips, the man revealed the truth. He was the tipster. He'd been sending those tips for months because the guilt had become unbearable. He'd been involved in the operation, had seen what was happening, had benefited financially, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to continue in silence. Turning himself in was his way of making amends, even if it meant facing serious criminal charges himself. His confession provided investigators with crucial missing pieces. He confirmed details about the operation structure, explained how transportation worked, verified that the trailer had been used exactly as suspected. He corroborated the physical evidence with insider knowledge. Most importantly, he provided testimony that would be admissible in court, the testimony of someone directly involved who could explain how everything worked from the inside. The case against Ryan Martin, which had been built on circumstantial evidence and suspicious patterns, suddenly had a foundation of first-hand testimony. The confessor's detailed knowledge of the operation, combined with the physical evidence recovered from the trailer, created a prosecution case that would be extraordinarily difficult to defeat. Ryan Martin's attorneys, wherever they were preparing his defense, had just lost their primary strategy. They could no longer argue that the hidden compartments might have been installed without Ryan's knowledge, or that the evidence was purely circumstantial. Someone on the inside had talked, and everything that person said pointed directly at Ryan Martin. The legal nightmare. Federal prosecutors now possessed evidence that could potentially send Ryan Martin to prison for decades, but they were holding back, being strategic about when and how they'd move forward. Why the delay? Because this was organized crime. Hitting one person while others scattered meant the rest of the network would disappear, destroy evidence, build better alibis, and potentially escape justice entirely. Prosecutors wanted everyone involved, not just the famous racer who'd made the mistake of becoming too visible. The charges Ryan Martin faced carried substantial prison time. Money laundering alone could mean 20 years. Add drug trafficking, illegal weapons possession, tax evasion, and conspiracy charges, he was looking at life-altering consequences. But prosecutors had a different priority, flipping Ryan Martin himself. They needed him to provide information about his co-conspirators, to explain the network's structure, to identify the people above and below him in the organization. If they could convince Ryan Martin to cooperate, they could potentially take down an entire interstate operation. The question was whether Ryan Martin would break. His attorneys weren't leaving anything to chance. They were building multiple defense strategies, preparing for various scenarios depending on how the arrest and initial proceedings unfolded. Their first approach involved challenging the search warrant's legality. They'd argue that investigators lacked probable cause to seize the trailer, that the search was based on insufficient evidence that anonymous tips shouldn't constitute reasonable grounds for such an invasive search. If they could get the evidence suppressed, the entire case might collapse. Their second strategy involved negotiating a plea deal based on coercion. They'd position Ryan Martin as a victim, someone threatened or blackmailed by more powerful criminal figures into allowing his trailer to be used for illegal purposes. This would cast him as someone who made mistakes under duress rather than a willing participant in organized crime. Their third option, if negotiations failed, was to fight every charge aggressively, challenge every piece of evidence, question every witness, make the prosecution prove every element of their case beyond reasonable doubt. Federal criminal trials favor prosecutors overwhelmingly. Defendants usually plead guilty and hope for reduced sentences because the government rarely brings cases without crushing evidence. But Ryan Martin's high profile and financial resources meant he could afford to fight longer and harder than most defendants. The legal process would take years: pretrial motions, discovery disputes, plea negotiations, possibly a trial that would expose every detail of the operation to public scrutiny. And through it all, Ryan Martin's fall from grace would continue to deepen. Every court appearance, every legal filing, every revelation would further destroy the reputation he'd spent years building. The fall and the future. Ryan Martin's current whereabouts remain officially undisclosed, though insider reports suggest he was taken into custody, granted bail with severe movement restrictions, and is now awaiting trial while confined to a specific geographic area. Friends who spoke with him in the days before the trailer search described increasing paranoia. He'd claimed to feel watched, followed. He worried his phones were tapped, which led to purchasing multiple burner devices. He'd become suspicious of everyone around him, behavior his staff had dismissed as stress or midlife crisis, but which now appears to have been justified fear of the investigation closing in. The question everyone asks: why did he do it? Ryan Martin had achieved success that most people only dream about. He had fame, fortune, respect, and a thriving legitimate business. Why risk everything for illegal activities? Was it greed? The need for more money, more success, more of everything despite already having plenty? Was it coercion? Had he been blackmailed or threatened into participating in activities that started small and spiraled beyond his control? Was it the thrill? Some people become addicted to danger, to the rush of living on the edge between legitimate success and criminal enterprise. For someone whose profession involves risk and adrenaline, perhaps illegal activities provided a similar high. Whatever motivated Ryan Martin, the consequences are identical: a spectacular fall from grace that serves as a warning to anyone tempted to maintain double lives. Street Outlaws will continue without him. Another champion will rise. The show will adapt, the way television always does when cast members depart, willingly or otherwise. Ryan Martin's absence will become normal. Eventually, new fans won't even remember when the Fireball Camaro dominated the track. But his story won't disappear. It will become cautionary legend, the tale of a champion who had everything and threw it away. Racing communities will reference him when warning young drivers about staying clean, about remembering that short-term gains from illegal shortcuts create long-term disasters. His family faces the worst consequences. Cherish, who supported Ryan's racing career and shared his victories, now deals with the stigma of association. their son Dax must reconcile the father he knew with the criminal defendant facing decades in prison. That psychological burden will follow them for years, regardless of trial outcomes. The Fireball. Camaro itself sits in evidence storage somewhere, its racing days likely over. The car that became legendary for its speed and consistency now serves as Exhibit A in a federal criminal case. And somewhere, Ryan Martin waits. Waits for trial, waits to learn his fate, waits to discover whether his attorneys can work miracles or whether his future involves decades behind bars, watching racing from prison television screens, forever separated from the sport that once elevated him to greatness. Outro. What drives someone to risk everything they've built? What made Ryan Martin believe he could maintain this double life indefinitely? Was he ever truly the champion we thought he was, or was racing always just his cover story? The investigation continues. More names may emerge. More people connected to this network might face charges. Federal prosecutors are building cases that could take years to fully prosecute. But one thing is absolutely certain. Ryan Martin's story changed street outlaws forever. It exposed the dark possibility that success in racing, or any highly visible profession, might sometimes hide much darker realities. The trailer that once carried the Fireball Camaro to victory after victory became a Pandora's box that, once opened, destroyed everything Ryan Martin had built. What do you think really happened here? Was Ryan Martin a criminal mastermind who fooled everyone? Or was he caught up in something beyond his control? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story shocked you as much as it should have, smash that like button, share this video with everyone who needs to know the truth, and subscribe to this channel for more revelations about what really happens when the cameras stop